Mmm, that's pretty tasty stuff right there. Sometimes we have to go through hard things in order to get to sweet things. This week, our Bible verse is Psalm 138:7, first part. Though I walked in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life. Let me do it again. Psalm 138, verse 7a. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life. David walked through some hard things in his life, and God preserved him through all of those things. You and I, sometimes we have to walk through hard things too. When I first started taking care of the bees, it was kind of scary because I didn't want to get stung. But the more I learned, the more I understood, the more I practiced taking care of the bees, the better it has become. So far, I've not been stung by the bees, even though I have to go into the hive, take out the honey, and then we take the honey away from the comb, and we get to enjoy all of the sweetness that's there. So just like David, when we go through difficult things, there can be something very wonderful that comes at the end. When we overcome the things that we're afraid of, then we get to have the sweetness, just like with the honey, even though I might be afraid of the bees. The second part of the verse begins to talk about the hand of God that preserves us in the midst of trouble. Let me read the whole verse to you. Though I walk in the midst of trouble, you preserve my life. You stretch out your hand against the wrath of my enemies, and your right hand delivers me. One of the things that we look at in this Bible verse is how God takes his hand and he covers us and he protects us. Sometimes we can think about the hands of God holding us in a very secure place. Sometimes we can think about the way God will use his hand to push back those enemies against us. You and I, when we fight, we will use our hands. And sometimes when we use our hands, we can use our hands in a loving way when we touch somebody that we love and we just express our love towards them. The hand of God covers us in many ways. When we think about the work that Jesus did on our behalf, when he was put on the cross, they put nails in his hands. They put nails in his feet. They crucified him there. It was with God's hands in a literal sense that he made a way for us to become right with him. So think about this in this coming week. How many different troubling places have you been in? How many times have you been in a difficult place where it felt like there was no way that God was going to help you? Well, we have to pause for a minute because here we are. We made it through more than one difficult situation in our life. God has provided for us in multiple ways, sometimes more ways than we even acknowledge. So think about this. Think about a hard thing that you went through in your life and how God's hand carried you through, how his hand provided for you. Sometimes God's hand is seen in the kind things that other people do for us. Sometimes God's hand is seen in a miraculous sort of way. Sometimes God's hand is seen in the ways that he makes a way where there seems to be no way. Just like with the honey, it might seem like an impossible situation. How can I get to that honey without getting stung by those bees? Yet God teaches us how to walk through those difficult places so that we can enjoy the good things of the Lord, even though we might be afraid. If you've been in a difficult place, if there's been a hard thing in your house, in your home, in your life, in your family, in your school, in your church, God's hand is upon you. And we call out to him, Lord, help us in the midst of these difficult situations. I pray today that you would come to understand, that you would see, that you would know how much God loves you, how he protects you, and how he provides for you. So, even though you might be afraid, God is still with you. Well, grace and peace to you. I pray for God's blessing now to rest upon your life.